The station hummed like a living creature, neon veins of light pulsing along its bulkheads, casting colors that shifted from electric blue to molten amber. The docking bays were chaotic, full of traders arguing over contraband spices and tech components that hummed like they had a heartbeat of their own. The alien girl moved through the crowd with a careful grace, her long ears brushing against the air like delicate sails, catching the glow of the station's lights. She glanced at the vendors hawking gravity-bending toys, barely aware of the subtle glances that followed her. She thought them curious humans, perhaps nosy or awkward, but the ones she couldn't see were more dangerous than awkward. From the shadows of a maintenance corridor, a human man watched her. He adjusted the collar of his worn jacket, muttering to himself in a way that was equal parts preparation and complaint. Why does anyone ever trust a translator app? It translates sarcasm into an insult and compliments into threats. Perfect. His eyes tracked her movements like a predator who pretended to be harmless. In reality, he wasn't here for hunting. He was here for protection. Assigned secretly by an interstellar security council that trusted him with tasks too delicate for bureaucrats, he had orders to ensure she remained untouched. And judging by the sudden spike in his neural sensor readings, someone was about to make the job more interesting. The mercenaries moved like shadows on a hunt, their black armor panels reflecting the station lights in sharp, cold streaks. One of them carried a crate that hummed with electromagnetic interference, probably containing a device designed to nullify telepathic signals. An annoying detail, because the girl's kind had that built in, and he relied on it more than he wanted to admit. He had to move fast. The station's maintenance lifts were slow, and a direct chase through the main thoroughfare would draw attention, and nobody liked paperwork involving galactic ransom negotiations. He reached into his pocket and activated a small jetpack. It wheezed like an old dog, sputtering and coughing before finally obeying him. He vaulted onto a railing and zipped across a tangle of corridors with more enthusiasm than skill, narrowly avoiding a cargo drone that beeped angrily as it veered off course to avoid his boot. "Sorry, Mr. Drone. I think you'll forgive me eventually," he muttered, although the drone's speaker system only emitted static in reply. Meanwhile, the girl paused at a kiosk, captivated by a spinning display of miniature starships that defied gravity and physics in ways that should have been impossible. She reached out to touch one, and her hand brushed against the smooth metal, only for the object to spin erratically before shooting up into the air. A sharp whistle followed it. Her ears twitched reflexively, picking up on the subtle frequency of the approaching mercenary. She frowned, finally realizing that the feeling of being watched wasn't just imagination. "Oh, great," she muttered under her breath. "I didn't even know someone wanted me enough to make this dramatic." The mercenaries lunged at her, and the crowd erupted into chaos. She barely had time to react, leaping backward as a crate of mechanical cats, an automatic security measure in the docking bay, sprang to life and began swatting at legs indiscriminately. One cat flipped a merchant's hat onto his face. Another tangled itself around a hovercart, sending it spinning into the wall with a soft explosion of neon sparks. The human protector seized the moment. He triggered a small magnetic pulse from his wrist device, attracting the metallic crate that the mercenaries carried. It jerked violently from their grasp, spinning into a display of glowing orbs and scattering their formation. Surprise! Everyone loves a dramatic entrance, he shouted, almost tripping over a rogue hovercart as he made his approach. The girl blinked at him, wide-eyed, not quite sure if he was helping or just entertaining. He lunged, grabbing her hand, and propelled them both through a narrow service door, which led to a maintenance corridor that smelled faintly of ozone and burnt lubricant. They stumbled, twisted, and rolled in an improvised somersault that ended with her flat on her back, staring at the ceiling panels and his slightly embarrassed grin. "You always save people in such graceful ways," she asked, sarcasm lightly lacing her voice. "Nope," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. Usually it's more fall-on-face and mutter curses, kind of graceful. Behind them, the mercenaries cursed in multiple languages, activating tracking drones that zipped after them with an irritatingly persistent buzz. The corridor twisted into a vertical shaft where gravity shifted from zero to partial, forcing them to cling to the walls like humans in a circus trick. He muttered instructions as she awkwardly adapted her stride to match his improvisational leaps, occasionally grabbing a handhold that flickered with magnetic energy. "Okay, I admit this is kind of fun," she said, laughing as she narrowly avoided being hit by a tumbling crate. He gave a short mock grimace. "Fun is not the word I'd use," he said, "but close enough." By the time they reached a service elevator that would take them to the station's lower, less patrolled levels, the girl's hair was a little disheveled, her long ears flicking with irritation and amusement at equal measure. The human tapped the elevator panel, whispering, "Just a bit longer, and we might make it without the press coverage and public arrests." The doors hissed open, revealing a dim, quiet level beneath the chaos, where conveyor belts hummed and cargo crates shifted lazily under artificial lights. They collapsed against the wall, catching their breath. She turned to him, a small, wry smile forming. "You know, for someone who looks like they're always late to everything, you're actually pretty fast." He raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, well, I have motivation," he replied, "and a bad sense of balance. Mostly the first one, though." Outside, the city station continued its endless hum, oblivious to the narrow escape in its veins. Somewhere above, mercenaries recalculated their strategy, drones buzzing like angry insects, while below, the human and the alien girl shared a quiet moment, the chaos temporarily behind them. She studied him, realizing that beneath the clumsy heroics, there was a sharp mind and a stubborn heart, both ready to protect her even in the face of impossible odds. And he, glancing at her long ears twitching in thought, couldn't help but feel that for all the danger and absurdity, this was going to be an adventure worth every misstep. The hum of the hidden station was a soft, constant presence, a lullaby that promised safety, or at least a pause in chaos. The alien girl perched on the edge of a maintenance platform, her long ears twitching in tune with the low-frequency vibrations that ran through the station's hull. The human sat nearby, arms crossed, trying and failing, not to look like he had just performed circus-level acrobatics while fleeing armed mercenaries. "You know," she said, her voice light, teasing, "for someone who claims to be a protector, you fall a lot." He shot her a grin that was equal parts pride and mild embarrassment. "I prefer the term strategic repositioning. Falling implies no plan. I always have a plan." Her laugh was quick and sharp, bouncing around the quiet room. "Sure, strategic. That explains the flying crate and near-death moments." He raised an eyebrow. "I'll take near-death moments over boredom any day. And technically, the crate neutralized our enemies, so I'd call that efficiency." She rolled her eyes, but the corners of her lips curved into a reluctant smile. "You humans really do have a strange sense of problem-solving," she said, her accent lilting in ways he found both confusing and charming. He shrugged. "Strange, yes. Effective also, yes. Mostly. Sometimes, maybe. Look, I'm not perfect, but I am persistent." Persistence, in fact, had become their greatest asset. The mercenaries were relentless, sending sleek drones that hovered like miniature predators, scanning every corridor with infrared eyes. One particularly annoying unit insisted on buzzing around his head, as though personalizing the hunt would make it more effective. He swatted at it, earning a mechanical squeal that sounded suspiciously offended. "Really? You couldn't pick the girl's ear to annoy first?" he muttered. She blinked at him. "You're worried about a drone attacking your hair. Interesting priorities, human." They moved carefully through the station, following narrow service tunnels that twisted like a metal labyrinth. The girl's species had the uncanny ability to emit low-frequency pulses that could disrupt sensors, but doing so drained her energy if overused. She tested her limits, sending a gentle ripple through the drones, watching them stumble and recalibrate like startled insects. He grinned. See, you're already better at this than I am. I'd probably break the station if I tried that. She smirked, nudging him gently. That's why I like having you around. You handle the falling, I handle the science-wise stuff. Their journey became a blend of improvisation and occasional absurdity. A maintenance hatch he tried to open refused to budge, and when he jabbed it with a crowbar, it launched a volley of floating coolant spheres that bounced between walls with a comedic rhythm. One sphere narrowly missed her, spinning past like a glowing pearl. She ducked, then smacked his arm. Nice reflexes, circus man, you could have taken my head off. He winced, rubbing the side of his face. Hey, I call that proactive hazard testing. Despite the chaos, a rhythm emerged between them. She began to share snippets of her life on her homeworld, tales of floating gardens that defied gravity, and cities built along streams of plasma, where residents commuted using magnetic currents rather than roads. He listened, fascinated, occasionally interjecting with jokes about how humans had finally managed to invent hoverboards that didn't spontaneously combust. She laughed at that, her ears flicking in amusement. For the first time since her abduction, the alien girl allowed herself to feel a thread of comfort in his presence, even if she refused to admit it aloud. Their respite was brief. The mercenaries unleashed robotic hounds designed to track life signs, their multi-limbed bodies skittering with precise coordination. One skittered past, miscalculating its jump and landing in a puddle of lubricating fluid, flailing like a mechanical insect. The human couldn't help but snicker. They brought the drama squad, he whispered, ducking behind a crate. She rolled her eyes, sending a subtle telepathic pulse that caused the hound to freeze mid-step, fumbling its sensors. You find that funny? She hissed. Extremely, he said, grinning. Especially the part where it's soaking wet and still thinks it's terrifying. They improvised a diversion, sending a cascade of magnetic debris down a maintenance shaft. Sparks and small explosions erupted, causing the hounds and drones to scatter in confusion. They dashed through the chaos, weaving past crates that levitated unexpectedly and narrowly avoiding an automated loader that had apparently decided they were cargo. At one point, he tripped over a hovering toolbox, landing face first into a pile of anti-grav containers. She tugged him upright, laughing. You do know we're supposed to be escaping, not auditioning for a slapstick show, right? He shot her a sheepish grin. The line between escape and comedy is thinner than you think. Eventually, they reached the central control hub of the station, a room of shimmering holographic screens and floating consoles. He tapped into the system, rerouting power and overriding surveillance protocols, while she concentrated, sending subtle pulses that scrambled any remaining sensors. The mercenaries' drones buzzed in frustration outside, unable to penetrate the shield of their combined abilities. They exchanged a glance, each recognizing the growing trust between them. Not bad, she said, smirking. For a human. He feigned indignation. For a human, I am a master of crisis management. Falling aside, I am the pinnacle of strategic thinking. By the time they collapsed against a console, breathing heavily but laughing at their own absurdity, the danger had temporarily passed. She watched him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement, noticing for the first time the subtle ways he anticipated her moves, adjusting his own with a fluidity that was almost instinctual. He glanced at her long ears twitching in thought and felt an unexpected sense of relief. You know, he muttered, we might just make a good team after all, as long as I survive the next 30 seconds of gravity fluctuations and sentient toolboxes. She laughed, a sound that reverberated softly in the hub. I think I can live with that, for now. Outside, the station continued its quiet hum, unaware of the small rebellion taking place within its walls. Somewhere the mercenaries recalculated their next move, and somewhere else, the human and alien girl shared a moment of quiet camaraderie, knowing that the chase was far from over. But that together, they might just outwit whatever came next, with laughter and ingenuity as their weapons. The asteroid base loomed ahead, jagged and unwelcoming, its surface pocked with craters and fissures like a battle-scarred warrior. The human and the alien girl hovered above it in a stolen shuttle, the engines humming nervously under his hands. "You know," he said, glancing at her long ears twitching in anticipation, "most people just call this suicide mission. I prefer extreme field exercise." She arched an eyebrow. "Extreme field exercise. That's optimistic even for you." He grinned. "Optimistic is my middle name. Well, it would be if my parents weren't terrible at naming conventions. Anyway, we've got this." The base was crawling with mercenaries, armed with pulse rifles and automated turrets. As soon as the shuttle touched down, a drone skittered across the landing pad, sending sparks in every direction. The human leaped out, tugging her along, narrowly avoiding an opening gate that would have impaled them both. She rolled her eyes, muttering, "Why do you always make an entrance like this?" He smirked. "Drama enhances the victory later." Inside, the corridors twisted like a hive, lights flickering under the strain of emergency power. Mercenaries patrolled in precise patterns, but their confidence was already shaken. The human and the alien girl moved with a rhythm born of their earlier escape, anticipating each other's movements. When a security turret activated, she sent a subtle telepathic pulse, scrambling its targeting matrix, while he dropped a magnetic decoy that spun the turret in dizzying circles. The first mercenary to stumble upon them froze, staring at the spinning turret. I quit," he muttered, stepping backward and tripping over a crate, much to their amusement. Their progress wasn't without chaos. At one point, a gravity field shifted unexpectedly, sending him sliding down the corridor at alarming speed. She reached out with her hands, grasping him by the collar and pulling him to safety, ears flicking with a mix of irritation and amusement. "You do realize you weigh more than a crate, right? You could have been a projectile." He waved his hands defensively. "I call it dramatic flair, adds tension." She snorted, shaking her head. The heart of the base was a cavernous control room filled with holographic displays and hovering consoles. The mercenary leader stood there, arms crossed, a smug grin on his face. "Well, well," he said, "look who thinks they can waltz into my domain." The human muttered under his breath, "Waltzing implies some grace. We're more like bumbling tornadoes." She ignored him, focusing on the task at hand. "We need to disable the central core. That's our leverage." They split their efforts seamlessly. She concentrated, sending pulses that disrupted the base's energy grid, causing flickering lights and sporadic explosions that sent crates toppling and robots malfunctioning. He darted between the chaos, jamming consoles, redirecting power, and improvising traps that sent mercenaries stumbling into walls or their own security systems. One particularly stubborn mercenary tried to corner them with a robotic hound, only to be tripped by a gravity-shifted floor panel. The hound skidded into a wall, whimpering comically. The alien girl couldn't suppress a laugh. "I think even the robot finds you ridiculous," she said. The mercenary leader roared, activating a plasma blade and lunging at them. The human leapt aside, narrowly avoiding a swing that would have been fatal, while the alien girl projected a telepathic illusion of multiple copies of herself, confusing him. He swung wildly at the illusions, crashing into a console, sparks flying in a shower of light. The human seized the moment, using a magnetic grappling device to pull the blade from his hands. "And that," he said, panting, "is why you never underestimate the power of improvisation and clumsy luck." With the mercenaries incapacitated or fleeing, the alien girl and the human turned their attention to the control core. She guided him through the sequence to lock down the base, rerouting the power to trap any remaining threats in isolated sectors. The station hummed under their control, lights stabilizing, systems returning to order. She exhaled, long ears twitching as the last security drone powered down. "We did it," she said softly, "all of it together." He nodded, brushing soot from his jacket. "Together, and I didn't even break anything important this time." She laughed, a clear, joyous sound that filled the room. They walked to the shuttle, surveying the wreckage of the base below. The human paused, looking at her, and realized something profound. He had always relied on instincts, reflexes, and a stubborn refusal to give up. But this journey had taught him more than strategy or survival. It had taught him trust, patience, and the value of cooperation beyond boundaries. She looked back at him, noticing the subtle shift in his demeanor. The weight of responsibility balanced with genuine care, the humor tempered by awareness. He was different now, not just a man chasing danger, but someone capable of protecting and understanding across worlds. The shuttle lifted off, engines humming against the backdrop of stars and the asteroid's jagged silhouette. Below them, the mercenary forces were scrambling to regroup, but it was clear the base and their plans were lost. She reached out, gently touching his arm, and for a moment no words were spoken. Their bond, forged in chaos and laughter, was stronger than any threat they had faced. "You know," she said finally, teasingly, "for a human you're surprisingly competent." He raised an eyebrow. "And for an alien you're surprisingly, terrifyingly effective." She snorted, flicking her ears. "Touché." They floated through the void toward the hidden station, the stars streaking past like lines of silver light. Outside, the galaxy continued its indifferent dance, unaware of the small victories achieved within its chaos. And yet in that shuttle, two beings, so different, yet perfectly attuned to each other, had proven that trust, ingenuity, and even a little humor could bridge worlds, defeat threats, and create something lasting. As they approached their destination, he grinned, a mischievous sparkle in his eyes. "Next time we aim for slightly less death-defying, okay?" She laughed, the sound echoing in the cockpit. "No promises," she said, and for the first time they both looked forward to whatever adventure the stars might throw at them next. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, and for the first time in a long while, they knew that